You are born around 1475 CE in a village above the sacred valley of the Inca Empire. Your home is a stone house with a roof of ichu grass and a doorway low enough that your father has to duck whenever he enters. He farms terraces cut into the mountain like steps made for giants. Potatoes, quinoa, maize if the weather is kind. Your mother weaves. Her hands move so quickly through alpaca wool that when you are little, you think cloth simply appears because she wills it to. She laughs often, but only after the work is done. In your house, laughter is a reward, not a habit. By the time you are 5, you already know how to carry water without spilling too much of it down your legs. You know how to sort dyed thread by color. You know the difference between a hungry season and a merely lean one by the look on your father's face when he steadies the store jars. Still, childhood is generous with small things. You race other girls along terrace walls. You chew coca leaves you are too young to be given and make a face so dramatic your cousins collapse laughing. You steal scraps of bright wool and wrap them around yourself like noblewoman's cloth. Sometimes you sit beside your mother and copy her motions badly with blunt fingers. When she sees you trying, she smiles in that private way that means you have pleased her. You grow beautiful without noticing it. Other people notice for you. An ant touches your chin and says the sun god must have looked at your cradle twice. Your mother tells her not to say such things. She says it too quickly. At 9, the women in your village begin lowering their voices when they speak about daughters. At first, you think it has something to do with marriage. Then one afternoon your mother braids your hair tighter than usual and tells you not to go to the spring alone anymore. You ask why. She says there are officials on the road. She does not explain what kind. A week later, they arrive. There are 4 of them. 2 local administrators, 1 elderly woman with a face like folded cloth, and 1 priest of the Sun Temple in Cusco. They do not come looking for thieves or tribute. They come looking for girls. Not all girls. The right girls. The ones with straight backs, unscarred skin, quick hands, fine features, and family lines clean enough to offend no god and no bureaucrat. They line the girls of your village in the square the way your father lined seed before planting. You stand beside your cousin and try not to fidget. The old woman checks your hair, your teeth, your hands. She lifts your chin toward the light. She asks your mother whether you have ever been sick in the chest. Whether you limp. Whether you sleepwalk. Whether madness runs in the family. The priest asks if you can weave. Your mother answers before you do. A little, she says. The old woman looks at the cloth tied around your waist, the one you helped finish. She knows your mother has lied for effect. She also knows exactly why. Then she nods. That is all it takes. Your father thanks them because that is what a loyal subject of the Sapa Inca is supposed to do when the empire reaches into his house and takes something worth having. Your mother does not thank anyone. She kneels and straightens your braid with hands that have suddenly forgotten steadiness. She presses her forehead to yours and tells you to remember your real name. She says it once, quietly, as if the walls have ears and she wants yours to be the only ones that hear it. By dusk, you are gone. The road to Cusco climbs and bends and never seems to end. Other girls join your group from other villages. Some cry openly. Some do not cry at all. One girl from the coast speaks a dialect you barely understand and stares at the mountains as if they might devour her. At night, you sleep in way stations with imperial runners coming and going in the dark. Nobody explains much. You piece it together from the words adults use when they think children are too frightened to remember them later. Aclla. Chosen women. Virgins of the sun. The house of the chosen women. By the time you reach Cusco, the capital looks less like a city and more like the empire trying to prove it was built by gods. Stone walls fitted so tightly a blade cannot enter them. Temples that catch light and throw it back. Courtyards full of people whose clothing alone tells you how far below them you stand. You and the other girls are led through one gate, then another, then into a compound where the air smells of smoke, wool, and flowers crushed under sandals. This is the acllahuasi, the house of the chosen women. The gate closes behind you with a sound that is not loud but final enough to make your stomach drop. That first night, you learn the first rule. You do not leave. The second rule comes with morning. You do not speak unless spoken to. The third rule takes longer to understand. You no longer belong to the village that raised you. You belong to the sun. The women who govern the house are called mamacuna, matrons old enough to command without raising their voices. They assign sleeping mats, tasks, lessons, and punishments with the same expression. You are washed, reclothed, and divided from the girls you walked with according to age and skill. One matron tells you that being chosen is the highest honor a common family can receive. Another tells you that the honor will become clearer once you have learned obedience. Between the two of them, you start to suspect honor is a word adults use when they mean sacrifice but do not want children to panic. The days settle into shape. You rise before dawn. You grind maize. You spin thread until your fingers harden. You learn to weave finer cloth than any woman in your village could have afforded to touch. You brew chicha for ritual use. You tend sacred fires. You memorize invocations to Inti, the sun god, and to the dead emperors whose names are spoken like weather. You learn posture, silence, and how to kneel without letting your robe fold the wrong way under your knees. Mistakes cost you meals. Repeated mistakes cost you sleep. A dropped spindle earns a slap. A ruined pattern earns worse. You also learn the hierarchy. Noble-born girls stand higher than village girls even inside the same walls. Senior Aclla outrank new ones. Mamacuna outrank everyone. Beyond them lie priests, noblewomen, imperial administrators, and the Sapa Inca himself, who is spoken of with the same careful tone people use for fire. You are near the bottom. Not at the bottom exactly, because somewhere beneath you are the girls who cannot learn quickly enough and are kept only for rough work. But you see them and understand the warning. Years pass. You become good. Not just passable. Good enough that one of the mamacuna begins setting your weaving aside for inspection rather than correction. Good enough that finer wool reaches your hands. Good enough that older girls ask you to fix their tension when no one is watching. One matron, Mama Rimai, is the first adult in the house who does not look at you as if you are merely material. She studies one of your finished pieces and says your hands were made for campi, the finest cloth in the empire. You carry those words around for months like warmth hidden in your sleeves. That is when you begin to imagine futures. The girls whisper about them at night. Some chosen women are given in marriage to nobles as rewards. Some remain in temple service. Some enter royal households. A few, the most beautiful or the most politically useful, are given as secondary wives to men whose loyalty the empire wishes to secure. It is not freedom, but it is shape. A house. Children. A name spoken by someone who expects you tomorrow and the day after that. You hold on to that. You are 12, then 13, then 14, and hope becomes a private craft of its own. There is another girl, Aclla, who sleeps 2 mats away from you. She was taken from the northern provinces and still rolls her R's in a way the Cusco girls mock. She is quick with jokes, terrible at hiding her feelings, and reckless enough to make you nervous. She says the house of the chosen women is really just a beautiful prison with cleaner floors. The first time she says it, you nearly choke trying not to laugh. That is how friendship begins here, not with trust, but with the relief of hearing someone say what everyone else only thinks. The two of you work side by side for years. You talk in whispers while spinning. You trade stories about mothers, about food, about which mamacuna are cruel because they enjoy it and which are cruel because the empire trained them that way. On winter nights, when the mountain cold creeps into the walls, Aclla says that if either of you is ever chosen to leave and marry, she hopes it is the other one first. You tell her that is the kind of curse disguised as kindness only a friend would invent. She grins. Laughter. At 15, you start bleeding and the house changes around you. Not openly. No bells ring. No ceremony marks it. But older eyes begin to measure you differently. Your meals improve slightly. Your posture is corrected more often. Fine garments are fitted to your shoulders. A priest inspects a row of girls one afternoon and pauses half a breath longer at you and Aclla than the others. That night, Aclla says she would rather marry a lame llama than a nobleman from Cusco. You tell her at least a llama cannot give orders in 2 languages. Laughter, it is the kind of conversation girls have when they are trying to dress fear in the clothes of humor. Then the earth shakes. Not enough to destroy Cusco, but enough to send bowls rattling and prayers racing through the city. A month later, word spreads that a provincial governor has died. Then that the omens have been poor. Then that the priests have recommended special offerings. No one tells you more than that, but the house grows tense. A set of girls are moved into separate quarters. You and Aclla are among them. For 3 days, you are bathed in scented water and fed better than you have ever been fed in your life. Your hair is combed with absurd gentleness. New garments appear, brighter than anything you have worn since leaving your village. Gold pins are placed at your shoulders. Nobody says the word. They do not need to. You have lived in the empire too long not to recognize ceremony when it starts dressing you. Capacocha. The offering sent high into the mountains when the empire wants the gods to listen closely. You had heard of it the way children hear of storms in distant valleys. Real, but far away. Something that happens to other people selected for purity, beauty, and imperial favor. The same qualities that once looked like a ladder now reveal themselves for what they always were, a measuring rod. Aclla understands before you do. Or perhaps she understands only a moment sooner. She takes one look at the ornaments being prepared and sits down very carefully, as if sudden movement might make the truth harder. So that's the shape of it, she says. You want to tell her she is wrong. You want to say Mama Rima will stop this, that skilled hands are not wasted on cold mountaintops, that there has been some mistake. Instead, you say nothing because silence is one of the first things the house taught you, and because deep down you already know this is not a mistake. It is the curriculum. Mama Rima comes that evening. She does not deny it. She says the empire has chosen you both for the highest honor available to common-born girls. She says your names will be carried by prayers across the 4 corners of the world. She says the gods will receive you gently. Aclla looks at her for a long time and asks whether the gods asked personally or whether priests are still answering on their behalf. Mama Rima closes her eyes. Just for a second. Then she tells Aclla not to be disrespectful on sacred ground. That is the closest anyone comes to admitting the truth. The procession begins at dawn days later. You do not walk like a prisoner. That is part of the design. You travel like a gift. Through villages, over bridges, across roads your father could never have used freely. At every stop, local people bring offerings, bow, and stare at you with the reverence reserved for things already halfway to legend. Children point at your clothes. Mothers pull them back by the wrist. Men lower their eyes. Women do not. Women look directly at you, and in those looks you see recognition, pity, calculation, relief that it was not their daughter this year. They give you coca leaves. Then chicha. Then more coca. The edges of the world soften. Hunger recedes. Sleep becomes a place you slip into even while sitting upright. The priests call this preparation. You begin to understand that preparation is another word adults prefer when they do not want to say surrender. Weeks pass like half-remembered weather. The air grows thinner. Trees disappear. The sky sharpens into something almost metallic. At one way station, you catch sight of your own reflection in dark water and pause. You look. Older than 15 and younger than anything that should be on this road. Aclla stands beside you and says if the gods like mountain air so much, they can breathe it without help. You laugh, and it turns into tears so quickly you hate yourself for being surprised. Near the final mountain, the party grows smaller. Less music. Fewer attendants. More priests. Ceremony narrows as usefulness does. By then, even your fear feels tired. On the last evening, you are seated with the other offerings in a stone shelter while wind scrapes the walls outside. There is a little boy from a coastal province wrapped so heavily in cloth he looks less like a child and more like a bundle someone forgot to untie. There is a noble girl younger than both of you who has spoken perhaps 20 words in as many days. Aclla leans her head on your shoulder when the priests are not looking. You remember the first night she made you laugh and think, absurdly, that this is the closest thing either of you ever got to growing old together. At dawn they dress you one final time. Everything is immaculate. That part offends you more than it should. The climb to the summit is slow. The priests chant between breaths. Snow squeaks under sandals. The world below you looks too large to care about any one life, which perhaps is why empires like mountains. From high enough up, loss becomes neat. At the top is a prepared chamber of stone and packed earth. Offerings have already been arranged inside: figurines, textiles, shells carried from far coasts, little treasures gathered from a world meant to witness your disappearance. The priests help the younger girl first. She is so drugged by then she barely resists being seated. The boy whimpers once for his mother, then not again. Aclla is taken next. She turns before entering the chamber and looks straight at you. There is no grandeur left in either of you now, no goddess, no empire, no honor. Just two village girls from opposite ends of a road neither of them chose. If there is another world, she says, her voice cracked by cold, I hope it has doors. Then she is gone inside. When they come for you, your legs are steady. You hate that. You hate that your body has decided to cooperate with the final command after resisting so much less important suffering for years. The priest at your elbow tells you the sun will remember your loyalty. You almost ask whether your mother will be informed. Instead, you step into the chamber. It is small. Smaller than the room where you learned to weave, smaller than the corner where you used to hide scraps of dyed wool as a child. They seat you with your knees drawn, wrap cloth tighter around your shoulders, place coca in your mouth, and set offerings beside your hands as if you might need company. Someone adjusts the fold of your garment. Someone else blesses your forehead. Then they leave. The stone is sealed. At first, you hear chanting outside. Then only wind. Then your own breathing. The cold arrives slowly, with manners. It does not rush you. You think of your father studying terraces at dawn. You think of your mother's hands pulling thread through thread until cloth emerged where before there had been only loose strands. You think of Aclla saying the house had cleaner floors than any prison had a right to. For the first time since you were 9 years old, no one is asking anything from you. No posture. No prayer. No obedience. No beauty. No usefulness. The truth is, by the time sleep takes you, the Empire has already gotten everything it wanted. Centuries later, your body will be found high in the Andes, preserved by cold, your braids still in place, your textiles still brilliant enough to impress people who have central heating and academic titles. They will call you an offering. A maiden. A chosen woman. They will photograph your face and write papers about imperial ritual, mountain religion, and the administrative genius of Inca power. Some of them will speak softly, respectfully even. But most will still describe what happened to you as though the ceremony were the main character. It wasn't. The main character was a girl from a village with a weaving mother and a father who farmed terraces in thin mountain soil. A girl who learned too early that beauty could be counted, obedience could be trained, and honor could be another name for being used up completely. The Empire promised that the sun would keep shining after you were gone. That, at least, was one promise it knew how to keep.